with the southern part, where the Selous Game Reserve is a game reserve. It attracts only for a long time, it attracted non-consumptive tourism, which is hunting. And hunting is practiced by only few tourists. These are sport hunting tourists, and therefore it's not a crowding activity. And for local communities to benefit from tourism directly, then I suppose there's a difference when it is a national park, consumptive, and tourists are coming for game viewing, they are coming for walking safaris, camping, but not the same in the south. Also, Selous is not very accessible. Some parts of it, I mean, if you have to go to the southern Selous, you have to take a journey to Songea, which is more than a day, and then to Tunduru and Namtumbo, it's another day. But of course, you can go straight to Rufiji, but there is just a difference when one plans tourism activity towards that area. So this makes a difference in terms of what tourism contributes to local development. Consumptive tourism, I have mentioned in relation to these two circuits, tourist circuits. Consumptive and non-consumptive utilization differentiates also the types of partnerships you have in areas around protected areas. In the national parks, the village land that borders national parks attract business-related partners, such as tourist companies that do camping, tourist camping, and therefore villages have that opportunity of engaging directly with the companies. But in consumptive tourism, which is hunting, then villages until recently didn't have that opportunity, which is almost the same issue with the difference between north and south. And then there's also a cultural aspect which determines how people look at partnerships. In the south, people are agro-pastoral, they don't do pastoralism. They are into farming. And they are also, as I said earlier, very, very culturally, they have wildlife as a cultural significant issue, which is at the heart of their meals, and this has changed over time, and therefore their way of looking at partnership is also determined by what do we get in relation to meat availability and so on. While in the north, you have pastoralists who are looking for more pasture for their livelihood, livestock, and they may need more areas for grazing and not necessarily, well, more areas for farming, although they also struggle with that. Now, if you look at these differences, then you realize when you talk about outcomes, the impacts of these partnerships, they may be different between one local context and another, but at the national level, when we discuss policy recommendations, we just need to bear in mind that our local specific area of this study is different from others, and therefore our discussion will have to also consider the differences. I also want to bring to your attention issues concerning global conservation governance, because they determine, and for me, this is very serious, they determine what we do at the local level. We might be talking about WMOs as partnership, complex partnership, and just end there and look at the impacts of that partnership. But I strongly link this partnership with the global aim of connecting protected areas, which is actually even regulated by, CBD and other kind of policies. As you can see, by the way, I did my PhD on bioregional planning, which is based on creating networks of protected networks between protected areas. This is where the idea of creating buffer zones and wildlife corridors come in, and also cooperation zone, which brings in local communities to make that happen. And after thinking about that globally, that's when we have also this picked up by IUCN categories of protected areas, which are globally recognized as, ways that nations, states have to create their protected areas. And that led us to the establishment of community conservation areas in 2003. This was a discussion at Durban conference, which discussed the ways to go about getting communities involved in creating the required connectivity. It is out of this discussion on this category of protected area that we got the WMAs and village forestry reserves to attract the attention of local communities to give in their land. You can read this statement from IUCN, which becomes our basis for discussing. What I want to bring here is we are trying to find ways of influencing policy. But as we do so, let's not forget that these partnerships are doing more than just the national level issue. It is also a governance at the global level, which therefore our recommendations have to take that into consideration. Now, our selected findings, the first relates to the fact that conservation partners and their networks have worked consistently, as I have said already, and they have done well in terms of expanding conservation in village land. This is a success, so ecological sustainability outcomes, that is contested, but at least there is a positive impact in terms of the conservation, because areas have expanded. Wildlife have more land beyond their borders to move around, and also connectivity has been created between protected areas. So donors, NGOs, the government, private sector, businesses, they have this as a good, they can celebrate this. And as I said earlier, you can see the network which has made that possible. The second finding from which we need to base our recommendation relates to the fact that local communities have participated with high but unmet expectations. And this is in relation now to livelihoods, clearly from crop damage, from the loss of, not the loss, but most of village land going to the conservation. You see that livelihoods have been constrained significantly, actually. This map here is, you will agree with me that there's a huge difference between 2007, when the initial plan was made. This is a land use plan for the Mungata WMA. The two villages, Ngarambe and Tapika, agreed to be part of a WMA, and they were involved. They were facilitated to participate. I like saying they were facilitated to participate in drawing a land use plan, which came up with the 4 important uses. There was a resident hunting block to attract a hunting investor, and therefore there's also a resident and farms, settlements and farms. But the greener part is a forest reserve, which is a government protected area. So the difference between these two is that in 2007, at least there was the orange part was accessible by villagers. They could fetch firewood and other building materials and forest-related products. But this area is missing in 2017 plan. When the land use plan was reviewed, this area just went into the WMA. There's a lot that happened, and the way it looks now is only wildlife and farms and houses. So, and there are no borders, you should remember. It's not that you have a fence here to say this is the end of your movement. You're telling the elephant to end here. There's no even that. It's not a fenced anything. So the space is really small for people, while the large area has been connected to the game reserve itself. Now, this is a result of partnerships. What happened in this area is specifically connected to the investor, the hunt investor, Tanzania Game Frontiers. What is it called again? Yeah. No, the first one. Game Frontiers of Tanzania. The owner of the hunting block in this WMA, which that time was directly controlled by the government, I think made a lot of unclear movements to get the leaders of WMAs to accept to combine resident hunting and the hunting block itself. Arguing that you're going to get more benefits, I will hunt for the village, I will pay more, and so on. Without knowing the impact, the longer term impacts, they accepted to combine resident hunting and the hunting block for the investor. So the result is that map, which is completely green, which benefits the hunters. Whoever comes and contract and have a hunting contract will benefit more, but the impact to the communities is really, really very significant and irreversible. Now, I have been shown a 5 minutes time. So what we are saying is living with wildlife can be a problem, but we have seen that still people are willing to participate, so it's a valid problem. There's both a need and opportunity for conservation partners to make a substantial difference to people's livelihoods, because this is what we see missing. However, as the need to manage and govern wildlife-related livelihood issues effectively and fairly grows, the apparatus for doing so, we think is missing, because problems are increasing rather than being managed, even though the government is perhaps making more money out of that. So our recommendations are all to the government, and I think we are directing all this to the government because the government has a total control of ownership. They have total ownership of wildlife and also policy making. The government should build trust among communities by making clear that it does not only defend wildlife. I perhaps have not said, and one of the our Jens brought up issues of citizenship, lakini pia, sorry, I have international audience, but we should have brought to your attention how really how traumatizing is Kiwango, who talked about yes, it's traumatizing to listen to local voices about what it means to be there and be killed and not be found. People in the family not finding the loved ones who missed. And when we were doing research, a lot of people had missed. And families know, when you have a loved one missing for a night, it means that person is gone. And with time, we got to get information also from game rangers who confirmed, yes, we don't play around with those who trespass these days. And that time, the president had allowed that to happen. And I remember the most traumatized person was Dan, who is showing me 1 minute, when we went to Mloka, and voices from youths were really, really traumatizing. And we prepared a blog post about it, but we just realized this was going to be bad news for us researchers, so we didn't publish that because the government would be crossed with us and would probably be banned from doing such kind of research. As we speak, we still have data which is not published on the shoot and kill policy, which has a lot of impact. This kind of thing has made communities to feel that animals are more important. So we are saying the government has to do something about this. Secondly, reduce the harm done by crop damage by revisiting the wildlife policy. Currently, there is only consolation for crop loss, consolation for people killed, but there should be compensation. Compensation is more useful for people because then they cannot replace loss of life, but at least crops, they will get food. Thirdly, make sure that more economic benefits from wildlife activities actually accrued to community, they accrued to community members. We understand there's a lot of community development work going on, but even if you have a school or a health center in the village coming from wildlife-based resources, you still have to eat. So, and you still have to have a decent house. We are saying households should feel that they have benefited directly from wildlife. Fourth, establish a clear organization and open communication using a variety of instruments that will promote transparency and improve responsibility of policymakers. Thank you, Dan. And fifthly, solve conflicts between tour operators and local communities over tourism contracts. We have not said this in details, but a lot of problems relate to bad contracts which are not allowing benefits to communities. Sixth, support alternative ways for local people to benefit from wildlife through community private tourism joint ventures. I hope this is going to be possible now in Selous because there's a national park now and non-consumptive tourism is going on. Strengthen partnerships by strengthening villagers' voices. I think this is where the issue of citizen engagement comes in. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Tina, and thank you all for participating in advance for your questions. I'd like to take questions in rounds as before. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat online as well, so people in the chat are able to participate as well. Could we begin with the first round of questions? Is that Wilhelm? Is that your hand? Thank you. Okay. Sorry? Oh. Do we have discussions for the policy brief as well? No. Do you want to respond to the discussants' questions? Sorry, what yes. I think what we are discussing is how to respond to the discussants. Is that correct? So I would like to welcome, sorry for not being clear. What I'd like to do is use this session to respond to the first briefing that we had about the findings, to respond also to the discussants' comments which we heard to that briefing, and also finally to the blog, to the policy brief that we've just heard from Professor Noe. So we've got 3 lots of content to respond to. Everything that we've heard, which we've not had a chance properly to discuss and ask questions about, that is what we're now going to go through all together. Tuko pamoja. Are we all together? Are there any questions? I've got Wilhelm, I've got Buki. 4 men are seizing this chance to talk, okay?
Yeah.
So, Wilhelm.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you for this opportunity. I think I'll have time to also have some more comments on what I just said as a discussant to this presentation. One is on restricted access. There was this issue of restricted access, especially on tourist hunting, and one of the examples that we are given is like you cannot hunt a lion that is of this size, of this age, or a leopard of this length. But then to my understanding, this is not really a restriction to the local communities directly, except for the benefits that would have accrued from tourism. But rather, this would be a restriction for the tour operators. So for them, I don't see that this is an issue, but they would kill the lions or they would kill a leopard as a retaliation because of the conflicts. Yeah, so maybe we'll have to make this clear, because this is very clearly stipulated in the Wildlife Conservation Act. Section 43 provides access on how access to wildlife is to be provided to local communities. Then the second issue that is needed for clarification is the partnership in the Selous Game Reserve. You seem to have traced the history to 1987, but then what were there before 1987 when there was a call because of the increased poaching, and then that's when we had the Selous Conservation Project. We had the likes of Baldus and Kagi. That's fine, but then I think we could go a bit back before time to see what were the drivers of change in the reserve, because it was designated in 1921, and yet we know the hunting regulations by the German colonialists started way back in 1891. So how were these kind of partnerships before the 1987? That's where we try to trace the history of partnerships in the Selous Game Reserve. And finally is the issue of rights. In one of your conclusions, you say that local community rights are not clearly defined. Well, in my opinion, I would say that the current policies and laws have defined these rights. Yeah, they've been stipulated what you can do and what you cannot do. But what might be the problem is that these rights may not be equitable, and they are seldom enforced, especially when they threaten the interest of the other partners. Thank you for now.
Thank you, Wilhelm.
Yeah, so thanks once again for the presentation. I have one comment and one question. Maybe I will start with a comment. I'm not sure if you came across the current National Human-Wildlife Conflict Management Strategy 2020-2024. I think it has a lot of issues which could also help to structure your policy recommendations, particularly when you talk of issues of compensation. I think that's a term which is no longer used in the wildlife policy in Tanzania. They use consolation. You know, it's and also in the National Human-Wildlife Conflict Management Strategy, they talk of one of the possibilities of having this sort of consolation, compensation issue is on insurance. They have mentioned particularly the potential for conservation insurance as one of the ways to sort of balance, or I don't know if it's the right word, but sort of balance between the costs and benefits that these people encounter as because of them living nearby this wildlife. And the question goes to the first policy recommendation, which talks about government building trust among communities, about that the government cares for people, not cares for animals. Yeah, I don't know, but I find this pretty difficult, bearing in mind that the ongoing practices, government practices on wildlife management and conservation actually depicts that the government cares more for animals. So I don't know how the same government and the people are going to trust that this government cares for us, while particularly if you think of the recent changes with the paramilitarization and the increased securitization of conservation. So I don't know how this how this recommendation is actually going to be practical in that case.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Could I suggest, before we come to the next set of questions, that we have a response first from the authors?
Thank you very much all for these very good constructive comments. Maybe I should pick a few things from, do I go to discussants, or now it's just the policy brief?
Could you just respond to the questions we've heard in the first instance? Because I think I'd like to bring in the discussants' comments in a later round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kiwango, thanks for bringing some of the issues that we need to take care of. The restrictions on hunting leopards and lions, yes, it's not directly the issue of communities, but when it comes to benefiting, if tourists are constrained by this kind of regulation, then few benefits, also cash that they pay is also small. But I understand how you have helped us frame it. So we'll go back to our writing to sharpen it. Now, the historical part of the partnerships, I would love to really go into that. I did my PhD around this, and I did a lot of review of literature, and I have also recently trusted that in a paper called Berlin-Cass. So that paper is about this history. And what we have is, what we are discussing here is not just partnerships, but the new partnerships. We are tracing the new partnerships, which are those beginning from 1990s when the community-based conservation started, and which attracted more partners than in the past. Indeed, Selusa has had many partners because it attracted attention internationally and locally, as I said earlier. The GTZ has been there forever almost. And you mentioned Selu's conservation program, which is a pioneer of actually other community-based initiatives around the country. So that history is very important also when we discuss the impacts of partnerships. But we could not just bring all this here because we wanted to focus on the new partnerships, which I hope we have managed to bring to your attention. But I also invite you to read what we have published already to expand this. We will also see how to bring at least to cross-reference the history of partnerships in the area. Thanks for bringing this up. Thanks for again telling us that the rights are clearly defined. I pick the fact that is the issue of equity, which we need to focus on rather than generally lack of rights. If Ruth will have additional issues, we'll respond, but if I can go also straight to Buki, the comment of human-wildlife conflict management strategy. Yes, we have seen this strategy and we have seen consolation, and what we are saying is consolation is not fair. It is compensation which can be at least fair. So we are not saying this is not there, but consolation surely is very small, but also doesn't come on time. So it doesn't really serve the purpose when somebody has lost so much. So I know there's a huge debate about this, but we are just saying that it's possible also to compensate people We have examples in other parts of the world where compensation is done. I don't know. We have Mwanauta from Tower here can help us more, but also we will go back to this strategy and read with this comment in mind. Maybe the insurance. You mentioned insurance, and I was happy to hear that word. I wonder how that will be possible to insure everyone who has lost, because really people have lost a lot. But if insurance will make more sense, then it will even be better. I speak from the village. I'm a human geographer, so I'm looking I'm looking at this from human perspective rather than the ecologists. Those who are speaking from the game reserve will also have something to tell us. Yes, the government building trust is, yes, I think you're right, and I think it's something to think about. Maybe other partners are the ones to help the communities and the government. I don't know. This, we will work on this, my book. Thanks for bringing this up. But Dan and Ruth could also intervene on my responses.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Christine. On the issue of restricted access to wildlife resources, as Dr. Kiwango has raised this issue is also affected local communities because, for example, Mongata, Ngarambe, they used to depend to get benefits from tourism hunting company. So when we went there for data collection, the guy told us that I'm not doing business right now for 3 years because of many things, including changes of this regulation. Because when they changed this regulation of lion and leopard, some of the hunters said that this is very difficult for them to do business. So if they don't do business, local communities also do not get the benefits. They stayed 3 years without anyone doing business in the hunting block, which is owned by Mongata CBO. That is the issue. And also issues of rights, that community rights are not clearly defined. Here, we meant that, in Tanzania, wildlife and land are owned by the government. So when local communities are told to protect wild animals or protect land, and they don't own the land, and they don't own wildlife, that one is tricky. It's difficult to protect something which you don't own. That is what it means. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Christine. Now we have 2 more questions. We have mjumbe wetu kutoka serikali wa upande wa wanyamapori, the wildlife representative, and we'd be very keen to hear your perspective too. I'll give you a little bit of time to compose your thoughts, if that's okay. Because in addition to the 2 questions, we also have 2 comments online which I want to bring in. So the first comment here, could I please use the microphone?
Yeah, okay. Madam Christine, you say that living with wildlife can be a problem. Does it cut across? Because if you go to the north, the Maasai will tell you that they know how to live in harmony with the wildlife. So presenting this statement to the policymaker, because it has to apply whether you are in the north or whether in the south, it has to be a statement that cut across. So I don't know how we are going to put it. And we said that strengthening the partnership, we have to strengthen the partnership by strengthening the villagers' voice. So this tells us that, okay, this new partnership is not community-driven. It's something that has been imposed. So to make it sustainable, how do we go about it?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not a prophet, but I think the new partnership and the trend we see now I'm sorry to say, is going to be decentralization. That is the new partnership. And we have tried to discuss this with the government, but the indicators we see from the state, decentralization is the way to go. And I can give some few examples. The recent move of Tower to upgrade these to game reserve. But when they were done as the wildlife management areas, they were participatory. But when they were upgraded, it was a statement signed, then sure, it is upgraded to game reserve. Tower, the same thing, also took over from the forests from TFS. TFS, realizing their forests are being taken, and now they are also moving to village forest reserve to take them. So for me, I see maybe the new partnership now is to decentralize, because I was listening to the minister the day before yesterday, or I think when he to allow the export of the live animals or wildlife to outside the country. And they have come up with a condition that they should be dried or they should be dead when they are when they are being exported. So it's more restriction, it's more of restriction rather than helping to create this conducive alternative which could benefit both partners. But I think for me, what I'm learning, and I think the time will tell, is the population pressure is going to be high in the next 20-30 years. And these wildlife management areas, they will be guarded by, I'm not sure if by arms or whatever, but I think the time will tell. Thank you. That is only my comment.
Thank you very much. Karibu.
The management of wildlife in Tanzania is governed by Wildlife Conservation Law, Chapter 283 of 2009. And there are also some regulations made in 2012, 2016, 2018. And all of these are prepared in order to operationalize the wildlife policy of 2007. And with that due diligence is that we cannot simply sit down and have regulations for every society or village or whatsoever. These are for the countrywide use. And for that case, we feel that sometimes that some people are marginalized. But as long as we cannot sit down and prepare a regulation for one village or two villages, these ones will always remain true. And these laws and regulations are not static. With time, we'll review and then we'll make some better amendment or put a new law or regulations. Even a need to develop 212 regulations was raised. Within 4 years of practice, we discovered that some issues were missing. Then we made another in 2016. After 2 years, then we discovered that there is something missing within that practice, and then we made this 2018. And this kind of subsequent assessment will always assist the country in managing wildlife. And moreover, for the issue of just ongoing the establishment of new game reserves, I can speak for one which I'm very much aware, the one of Wamimbi Game Reserve, of which the call was made from villagers that they want to start to upgrade that area. And that call came in when the donor funding ceases. When the donor funding, initially it was supported by Danish hunting organization. And then things were moving very good. There are still remnants and marks of the good efforts which were produced by that project. And when the funding ceases, donor funding ceases, a lot of people then came with their cattle in ABCD. Therefore, it's the villagers themselves called for the more protection, called for the alignment of the boundary, called for more benefits to the villagers, and called for participation of those people in conservation. The other areas which my friends from TFS have just noted, it's true, there are so many considerations for an area to become to be upgraded, and it's likely that there has been no area which has been upgraded without a reason. Probably there was some sort of misengaging of some partners that would have happened, and I'm sure there are still some negotiations between members of the ministry and the other areas on this issue. Thank you very much. And probably one thing may I add, let's use the data which you have simply collected from this project maybe to scale up and find other projects which in the near future will simply come up with the results which will simply address some of these issues which we are discussing now as an anomaly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and your point on data is well taken. Christine and I are particularly keen on using data over the long term, and in fact we're very fortunate that Esteban Corbera, who is one of the discussants, has already shared his data from 4 or 5 years before our project. So we are getting that continuity, because you're absolutely right, this is an important issue. I want your comments are very interesting because they bring out the question of national consistency and local variety. And this ties in quite well with the comments that you can see online on the screen behind me, which is on the one hand to ask, as Jevgeny and Esteban Corbera have both asked, are there national level databases of the scale and location of human-wildlife conflict, so one can understand more of the geography of where these problems arise? But from the data arises a subsidiary question which Esteban touches upon, which is to what extent are the issues that people have with wildlife felt nationally, and to what extent are they felt locally? Are there forms of national movement which arise because the wildlife issue is something which touches everybody? I don't think so. Or is this a more of a local level politics, which then raises the question of how one responds to that in national level policy? But I highlight this because it brings out the point that Jevgeny was making in his discussion about the question of conservation mentality and of trying to explain the paradox of people not benefiting very much in general, a minority suffering more, but general levels of satisfaction. Because just Jevgeny's explanation and my explanation differ slightly, and I think his explanation is better, which is slightly annoying, but that's my problem. The difference is that I would simply explain this as a question of distribution, that where misfortune is concentrated on a minority, then the politics are such that the will of the majority carries through, as we may be seeing in this new game reserve that you're establishing. But Jevgeny's explanation is actually more challenging and quite richer. He's saying there is a change in mentality, a change in thinking more broadly that accommodates these paradoxes. And we can't see this as simply two groups of society who are experiencing different things. He's saying there's a more general change in view. Jevgeny, I do hope I haven't misrepresented your argument, and do come back to me if I have. I stole the chair. I took chair's privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to talk for too long. Authors, do you have responses to anything that we've heard? Christine, Ruth?
Can I go back to Manauta, because this is somebody who will help us get our policy brief useful. If we could know what will not work for example, when we say compensation instead of consolation, or when we say to build trust, I know you are the ones who are not trusted. What strategies are there within the government, at least, to do that, so that we can also sharpen our recommendations, not to waste the energy into making a policy brief which will not penetrate your circles.
Thank you. The idea is accepted. We'll have to sit down and see how we can shape it together. Because why writings? It's very unfortunate that I didn't come across any document prior to today. And for that case, no room was availed for us to comment on that. And given that I probably to be you, it will be more important because we can as well make some citations as other data which we are still having in our office. But moreover, there is one thing which I've just forgot to comment on. The issue of cats of 6 years for lions and cheetah. There was a worldwide cry that cats are killed when they are very young. Normally, tourist hunting is aimed at killing animals which are old and they are no more productive. That issue when came, there were sort of meetings which we conducted ourselves and our consultants and other people on the age of elephants to be killed. And that was agreed that we shouldn't kill these young ones. The determining factor was thought to be we didn't have any data of the population of lions, male lions we have in Tanzania and their groupings. Lack of that simply amounted to decide that we should simply kill lions when they are over 6 years, and leopard of that measurements which I've just pointed out. And local people, it's true, businessmen are always going for more profit. And for that case, there have been a cry that they haven't hunted the ABCD. Sometimes it's a trick of that business. You bring a tourist in, you hunt in, you go with him in the bush, you spend 20 days without hunting that animal. On expecting that he will come next time to hunt for the same species. Therefore, we shouldn't be trickled by business people sometimes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wondered, Ruth Christine, if you would like to respond to the question of how national, what sort of national level reaction there is to this, issues associated with wildlife. Is it purely a local question? This is Esther-based question on the screen.
Thank you very much. I don't think this is a localized problem. It's a national-wide problem. There's an outcry across the country. I worked on my master's research in West Kilimanjaro between Kilimanjaro National Park and Amboseli National Park. The communities there had no WMAs then. There were human-wildlife conflicts. Then WMA endowment now exists. There are benefits comparatively compared to the south. There's money coming in, but there are a lot of conflicts. So conflicts are increasing. You go to Serengeti, it's the same story. So I don't think conflicts are a localized problem because we also have, if I'm correct, Manauta, wildlife is also, the numbers are going up. Much as we hear that elephant numbers are, the elephants are threatened, but every time I go, at least from the local voices, people say they have never seen large groups of elephants like they see now. you go to the official statistics, elephants are declining, the numbers are declining. So conflicts officially recorded, they should not be there because elephants are reducing, but you go down, elephants are in good numbers. Now, there could be many explanations, including the fact that now elephants have habitats outside their core protected areas, and they find it safe because they are protected. But this increases the conflicts. So it's not a localized problem. There could be differences, that there are more conflicts in one area than another. But every time I look at local news media, there's plenty of reports, local reports about these conflicts. Villages are being relocated, actually. And this I would like to connect to one of the issues raised by Jens, that local communities do not seem to benefit, but they are still accepting to participate. I think they have very few options because of the way participation process came in. You will agree with me that partners have invested in awareness raising. And awareness raising here means training these people to know the benefits of wildlife. And this means you are being told how much you can get if you let the elephant come to your land. So there is this anticipation that this is going to happen, but it's not forthcoming. So people still they anticipate this benefit, and they hear from people in Rubonda, what is the name of the village again? It's Serengeti, Robanda, that they get millions of shillings per year. There are villages like Sinya where they get millions of shillings per year. These are also villages, but these are few cases, and so anticipation for benefits is still holding people to the idea. But the other thing is there's a complete change of land tenure, actually, because now it's regulated that wildlife management areas are also wildlife corridors. So people cannot go back and reverse this decision. To simply put it simple, WMAs are actually protected areas under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism. So people don't have control over these areas, much as they are called participatory and they participate. Now, at this point, they participated. So how do they actually now go against their own participation? They can only complain about the impact of their participation. So it is out of how the partnership, the process of making people participate happened, which is making it complicated for people to resist actively, and also to reverse any decision that they have already made. Something to do with, thanks Jens for bringing up the issue of quantifying and maybe bringing social network analysis to chapter 4. We had this idea of having social network in at least every chapter, but it became complicated because it would appear, social networks would appear in every chapter, but in a very shallow way. So we agreed at the editor level that we have the part of social network analysis strengthened, and therefore avoid having these patches in different chapters. I think we have heard your concern. We will also look into it. I like the comment made by Meshach. It's exactly what we think. The new partnerships have now meant that they have facilitated decentralization. This is what we have also seen, and well done.
Thank you, Christine. We are running out of time. I just wanted to check about the question of the national level data on human-wildlife conflict. Is there such a national database? Is there such a database? It does exist.
Yes.
Who maintains and looks after that database?
Wildlife Division.
Okay, thank you. Right, folks, we have overrun by 15 minutes. Thank you very much indeed for your patience. Please forgive me if we have left any of your questions unanswered. There will be opportunities to come back to those in subsequent discussions and in the networking afterwards. Could you please join me in thanking the speakers, the discussants, and all the people asking questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks everyone in the room. Thank you to all of you online. I think this has been a very intensive, very interesting set of discussions. Of course, today we chose to go deeper into the 3 resource areas. We have already seen a lot of cross-cutting elements here. And I would really like to encourage you, especially those who are specialists in one of the resource areas, to do come back tomorrow, because there's a lot to be learned also on your specialist area by looking at some of the results of the comparative work that we did, which is, I must say, quite sophisticated. So thank you all. Thanks to the media group and the local organizing committee for making this work, except for a little glitch. I have had a number of people online saying, this is amazing. I've never been to a hybrid conference like this. Usually at a hybrid conference, people forget about the people online and you can't hear anything. The use of the various cameras, and so that is working really well. I've got a lot of compliments. And people telling me from my own university saying, can you bring them up? We can't run it like that ourselves. So thank you for that. Extremely good cooperative effort. In the program, we had originally set half an hour for reflections, but it was also a bit of a buffer area. I think we're all fairly done for today and tired. So instead of recapitulating some of the key issues today, I may start the day tomorrow to get you started going back to some of the issues that we highlighted today. So I will do that tomorrow morning. So without further ado, I think I will ask now the local organizing committee to tell us what is the plan from now on, because there is a very important item in the plan. It says 5:30 drinks and social activities. I know that dinner is not going to be at 7:30 like it says on the it was going to be earlier, but you get all the information now. But for the time being, I just wanted to thank you very much for today. Christine will give you the last bit of important information.
Thank you, Stefano. I'm speaking for the local organizing committee. Thank you so much for this active participation today, online and physically. Thank you so much, our discussants. Sorry that you are not going to join us for drinks. This is a bit, but maybe next time. The evening is ending with a conference dinner where we will have, we will relax a bit. I have been informed that we'll start at 6 sharp, and we will also provide few drinks. I mean, softy drinks will be there, but the hardy drinks will be few, and after what we have, you are welcome to go down to the bar to bring something up, or we will bring somebody to service us on your own pockets, please. The second issue relates to the fact that the dinner will be outside here. So if you're going out, you will have to come back. Of course, we have to go out. I'm informed that, yes. I'm informed that there's a match starting from 4 o'clock. So I hope it will go well, so we get Rasul back to the dinner. Otherwise, it may bring some problems. Also, I was reminded that we missed a group photo this morning, which will really be nice if we can get one now. And we are just going to get this outside the door, this side. So could you please make yourself available for a group photo to keep the memory. Otherwise, thank you again for this active day. Thank you guys online. I have seen people I know. Maria is my students at Oslo Med. Thank you for joining, Maria, and all that have really spent their time here. Thank you so much. So I'm ending the meeting now. Thank you so much, and enjoy your rest of the evening.
Forgive me, Tino. Where is it that we meet for dinner and drinks? Is it just here?
Outside.
Okay.
Thank you.